I'm going to pass it over to you and let's talk about longevity, which wraps into inflation and just about everything else.
Yeah, longevity seems to tie almost everything together in that list of seven that we were talking about. Um, we're not born with a barcode with an expiry date, so it's really hard to picture what our longevity is going to be. And I keep talking to people, and one of the number one things people bring up: will I run out of money because I'm going to be living longer? Will I run out of money? Will I have to be dependent? Will I have to sell my house? Will I have to do this? Will I have to do that? But they're all worried about longevity, and they want to enjoy their life as long as they can. And that's great stuff. And today, with the modern healthcare, the medicines, the technology that we're implementing, and we're actually extending our lives. It was never back in the 50s and 60s. If you heard of someone living to, the 50, 60, so they're like, oh, he lived a good age. Now, when you're hearing someone died at 81 or 82, you're going, wow, they were young. And it's quite amazing how we've come along. And the average family, if you're married, you're living till your mid 90s. And if you're single, females still live a little bit longer than males, and even 84. So when you're looking at those numbers, that's a big difference from when you retired at 60. That used to be the traditional age, or even lower than that, and you live 10 years. Now you're living 20, 30 years. So you got to have something put aside for those years. And then the first segment of that retirement, that's probably when you're the most healthiest and most mobile. So in those years, you actually have money. You have money to enjoy life, travel, whatever the case. Everyone has a different one. So I don't want to even put words in anybody's mouth of what they want to do with their retirement. So that's a major thing. And then the second half is when they have some health issues. Pam, if you could throw up that slide, that'd be great. And this slide basically shows that the average couple, one member of a couple will be diagnosed with a serious illness between 45 and age 70. That's 60%, 61%. That's pretty high, but it gets even astronomically higher at 90% between 70 and 95, between 45 and 95. So when you look at that, we know that you're going to get sicker down the road. So what's your plan? Are you going to be that boomerang? We have boomerang kids right now. So I think it's going to be changing to the boomers are going to become boomerang parents that now the kids have to worry about. And a lot of parents don't want the kids burdened with that. So you have to kind of plan for that for the future. And Ray, I know you've got some stats on this, so I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. A few years ago, Tony, we were talking about how many boomers were turning 65. So the number of boomers turning 65, and now we're talking about the number of boomers turning 80. The first boomer turns 80 in 2026. That's in 4 years from now. That's going to come in a flash. The last boomer is going to turn 80 in 2046. That's going to come just as quick. Like I said, we were talking about, when they were turning 65. Now we're talking about 80, and that's going to really eat up the retirement. You also mentioned that how retirement is segmented. People don't realize you can spend as much time in retirement as you can working. You can spend 30 years in retirement. Sorry, you can hear my dog ringing the bell here. I apologize for that interference, but people can spend just as much time in retirement as they do working. So you really have to have a strategy and plan for that. I'll give it back to you, Tony.
Yeah, what we're always hearing about, and we've touched on it before, will I run out of money? That's one. Can I afford long-term care? Will I be forced to sell my house, downsize, or will I become that burden to the society or burden on my family and get forced on the street? Let alone, what's the healthcare costs? One thing we haven't even addressed in this is inflation. There's different stages of inflation for everyone. Even that we talk about one inflation number, think about it that when you're working and inflation hits, you could still have the opportunity to make more money and to cover off and make do with that. But once you hit retirement age and you're on a fixed budget, that you really truly are fixed, And when you hit that number and inflation hits, what are you going to do? Start eating craft dinner because you're trying to cut back on things? That's really tough. And a lot of people don't even factor that in. And inflation today is at its highest level in 18 years. And trust me, when the government's saying that the inflation is X amount, go for yourself and see how much that food went up, that steak or that chicken or whatever you like. If you're vegetarian, how much those vegetables are costing more, and it's only going to increase. And I laugh about how inflation's temporary. Well, yeah, it was temporary in the 70s. My mother bought a house for $16,000. I would love to go back and buy that house because it was only temporary, right? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, inflation is different for everybody. It's different for the younger people, different for the older people. As you get older, the inflation is going to be in your healthcare. Right now, for you and I, Tony, it's in places like food, fuel, housing, that kind of stuff. And then that will also affect people when they're older, but really it'll come into different products that they consume. So it's stealth. And I mean, we've seen packaging get smaller. I remember, you could get something with, say, 850 grams. Now it's down to, 675 or 700. Same price point, though. So inflation is there. It's just not in your face, but now we're getting more in your face inflation.
Yeah, I love the analogy of that chocolate bar, that if you were around in the 80s, you remember the size of that chocolate bar for, let's say it's $1. That same chocolate bar is less than a third the size, and it's $1.50 now. But there's no inflation there at all. No changes. So yeah, I think we've covered a lot today, and unfortunately we're running out of time. We're getting close to our end here. One thing I got to tell everyone is you're always welcome to reach out to us, and I'll give you more information. But first, James, is there any more questions?
Yes, Tony. Jordan has a question. She wants to know, why are companies not offering pension plans anymore? Why are they group RSPs instead?
Well, the main reason the companies are not offering the pension plans anymore, because it is a burden onto the companies, especially as we're living longer. They have to make sure that you have enough money till your expiry date, and it becomes very, very costly. So it's cheaper for them to actually put some money aside into a group RSP, and it's your risk to do whatever you want with that, and hopefully you make the right decisions. They're just taking the risk off them. They're going, here's a pile of money, and we'll add a little bit along the way, and you're on your own. While the pension plans, the golden pension plans of the years past, are just unbelievable. Even one of the largest pension plans right now, OMERS, is changing their pension plan system. Right up to 2022, when you retire, your pension would be indexed, meaning it will go with inflation or a certain amount of inflation. Well, after 2022, anyone that is putting into that pension plan, they're on their own. So you might get a fixed dollar amount when you retire, even if inflation's like eating half of it. So it's a good question, and we could really dig deeper on it, but that's the nuts and bolts of it, is basically that they're taking the risk off them and putting it on you, and saving costs. So that's the main thing. So Ray, anything else you want to add to that?
No, absolutely. You're right. They're just transferring risk. It's all about risk transfer from the employer to the individual. A lot of people aren't realizing it. And a lot of people would love to hand over their money and have a guaranteed pension, but that's not the reality these days.